Hello and welcome to this, my first ever YouTube video. So I'm still playing around with what I would like my channel to be about, but I thought a good place to start would be movies, as I'm pretty sure you can tell behind me, I love movies, and Marvel superhero movies in particular are some of my favourites. So I thought I would run through my top 5 favourite Marvel movies. No particular order, these are just 5 that I love. And feel free to disagree, it'd be boring if we all have the same opinions, and I'm happy to have a debate down in the comments section. So yeah, let me know your top 5. Okay, so starting off, I want to talk about Avengers Assemble. And this movie, even though I'd watched a lot of superhero movies growing up, this is the movie that sparked my obsession, to say, with regards to Marvel and superhero movies. Because I remember just sitting at scout camp, they'd put on a movie, a projection. This movie had not long been out. They put on this movie. Oh my god, I loved it. It was incredible. I mean, the cast. I hadn't watched any of the other MCU movies. And the way that this is written and the way the cast interact, I didn't need to, because it just flowed and the story told itself. I didn't need a load of background stuff. I could just enjoy this movie on its own. And the way that the cast interact, the chemistry between them, I think is a testament to why the MCU did so well and still does so well, because they cast very well, and the chemistry that all the cast have, you can tell that they're mates in real life, and it just works. A lot of things from Phase 1, the assemblance of the Avengers, no pun intended, and as well as that, it then sets up future MCU movies. So you've got the post-credit scene with Thanos, of course, but as well, there's a lot of little things like the conflict between Tony and Cap, because you see them rubbing shoulders a little bit, fighting for leadership and so on, which will tie into Civil War. Things with regards to Tony's PTSD. There's a lot of good stuff in this, which really brings the cinematic universe together, as well as expanding it. And Joss Whedon, the director, did an amazing job with it. They sometimes criticised for making it too funny, and the lighting's too bright, and I will admit Cap's costume in this is ridiculous. But I never find it to be too funny or the lighting to be off-putting. I find it perfect. I find it's good, it's fun, and it's probably the Marvel movie that I rewatch the most. It's just a good fun time, and who doesn't want to go to the movies and have a good fun time? The next movie I want to talk about is the original Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire SpiderMan. I mean, what a movie. This, as well as X-Men, of course, and Blade, arguably, kicked off the modern superhero buzz, which still exists to this day, which is fascinating, because this is nearly like 2 decades old, and it still holds up as not only a good Spider-Man movie, but a good movie in general. I mean, the world building in this is brilliant. It's so comic booky, it's so fresh, it's so fun to go into this world. I have fond memories of this movie as well. You know, on a Saturday morning, putting in the VHS, bowl of Ready Break, and just watching Spider-Man, because I enjoyed being a part of this world and watching the world adapt, and Peter Parker's origin. I think it's done best in this one, because obviously the Amazing Spider-Man delves into it a little bit, and the MCU just sort of glosses over it because we're sick of it by that point. But I think it's done the best in this movie. A particular highlight for me, and I know it deviates a little bit from the comics, is the guy that Peter Parker allows to get away after the robbery is the same guy that kills Uncle Ben. And that just breaks my heart. Every time I watch it, it breaks my heart, because he could have done something. Could he have saved his uncle? And we know that Uncle Ben dying is a big catalyst for Spider-Man becoming Spider-Man. And I think the fact that he could have done something as well is a really good representation of why Spider-Man does what he does, but why we should all do the right thing as well, because you never know what might happen if you don't follow through and do the right thing. And I just think it's a really sort of an interesting thing to ponder on. And considering it's a kid's movie, that is really dark. That is really dark. I mean, there's just so many highlights in this movie. Tobey Maguire is a fantastic Peter Parker, and for many is and always will be the definitive Peter Parker. And while I personally prefer Tom Holland, I do understand that because he's brilliant. He's just so... He captures the sort of tragedy of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And again, if you want fun out of your Spider-Man, I guess this isn't quite the movie for you. But at the time, it really grounded the superhero character. J. Jonah Jameson, Green Goblin. There's so much good stuff in this movie and the following movies in the trilogy. Some people say Spider-Man 2's better. And again, amazing movie. I love that film. Doc Ock is great. But for me, I just have so many fond memories of this movie, so it will always be the better out of the three. Up next is a movie that I sometimes hear called overrated. And I do kind of get that criticism, but it's Captain America, the Winter Soldier. And this, again, is a lot of fun. And for me, it fixed Captain America as a character. Because I'm in my friendship group, I go down as saying, you know, I don't like Captain America in the first Avenger. I find him boring. He's too good. He's not a relatable character. I don't find him interesting because the bottom line is he's amazing and he's doing it for his country. Which isn't a bad thing. I just don't enjoy that in a superhero movie. I like to have some relatability and some sort of inner conflict. And this movie does that perfectly. Because the collapse of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Steve seeing his best friend again, and you know, his trust in the government and that flares a little bit. It doesn't, you know, it questions a lot of his values and his beliefs and puts him in a position where he doesn't quite know what to do. He's not sure what the right thing is. And I like that because a lot of us are like that. We don't know what the right thing is to do. And it's that inner conflict that I really like, and it sparks him being a better character for the rest of the MCU because he's not just vanilla plain white, I'm great. He really has a lot going on in this movie with regards to his inner conflict, and the turmoil he experiences then affects him for the rest of the MCU. And thank God they finally got rid of that god-awful costume. His costume in this is so much better. Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow is in this, and this sort of set a precedent for the MCU that other characters can interact in other people's movies without it being an Avengers movie. And I really like that because it makes the universe feel real. Because of course these people would meet up outside of the Avengers movies because they're friends and if they need help and whatever. It makes a lot of sense and I like that. And it sort of sets another precedent in that big universe-shaking events can happen in individual movies. It's not just the Avengers movies where those things happen. And, you know, some people will argue that that's not brilliant, and at this point it's when the MCU becomes a little bit too convoluted and hard to follow. You have to watch them all to understand it. But again, I don't mind that because I watch them all anyway and I enjoy them all anyway. And I like that that can happen. It means that I go into a movie and it's not predictable. Anything can happen in any movie and I really enjoy that. Samuel L. Jackson in this is also brilliant. Another highlight. He's brilliant as Nick Fury. He's always brilliant as Nick Fury. He's just amazing. The only thing that I don't like is that in the end of the movie, he retires as Nick Fury. But then by the time we get to Avengers Age of Ultron, he's back. And he's got the helicarrier and he's still got his eye patch and that. And that really irritates me. But that's more of a fault with Avengers Age of Ultron than it is a fault with The Winter Soldier. So it doesn't dampen my love for this movie. Okay, the next movie irritates me a little bit because it is so underrated. I never really hear people talk about this movie anymore. And it just doesn't get the love that it deserves. And that's X-Men Days of Future Past. I love this movie. And I don't understand why I don't hear about it more. It's so clever. It ties the original X-Men, your Patrick Stewarts, your so on, with your James McAvoys, the new X-Men. And it's brilliant. It's done so well and so clever. And I just enjoy it. I mean, I feel like I'm repeating myself because a lot of these movies I do just simply enjoy. And I can't always explain why I enjoy them, but they're just brilliant. But this is fantastic. And it should be talked about. It should be spoke about so much more because it's so good. The movie, for a lot of it, follows Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique. And I like that because I like those characters. And it could almost be a Wolverine movie, I've heard a criticism, because it is, he's in it a lot. But it's not, because it ties into the X-Men a lot and the greater X-Men narrative. And I also hear the criticism that it doesn't fit in with the timeline and the X-Men timeline's messed up. But, like, come on, guys. Like, I've given up with the X-Men timeline. I don't care about the X-Men timeline anymore. I just watch them as movies. I watch the first one, the second one, the third one as separate movies. Because if you try and figure out the timeline of this, it will kill your enjoyment of it. And I just think they're better movies if you just watch them as movies. And Days of Future Past, after Avengers Assemble, is probably the MCU... It's not MCU, but it's probably the Marvel movie that I watch the most. Because it's fun. And I actually purchased the Rogue Cut version of this, special edition, because I really like Rogue in the original trilogy of X-Men movies, and she's not really in Days of Future Past, the theatrical release, apart from a little cameo at the end, and I always thought that was quite strange. And then when I heard they were releasing this, I was very excited. And I understand why her plot thread was cut out of the movie, but I really like Rogue, so it's a lot of fun being able to experience this movie with her in, and looking at what she was up to during this. So, you know, you can have your theatrical version, which is more streamlined, or you can have your Rogue Cut, which I personally prefer, because I like Rogue, and it fills in the gaps a little bit, I feel. Okay, and finally, it's the big one, and I'm sure you're all wondering why I haven't mentioned this yet, especially people that know me. It's Avengers Endgame. I mean, just saying it brings a smile to my face because I can't describe the love, affection that I have for this movie. It's amazing. It's brilliant. And when it was coming out, I'd never been more excited, more anticipating, is that a word, for a movie than I was for this. I saw it opening day, which I never do because it does my head in with the crowds, but I saw it opening day. I watched it 3 times in the first week it came out because I loved it that much. I was that excited. I enjoyed it that much. And sure, you can at me and say that Infinity War is a better movie, and I won't fully disagree with you because Infinity War is incredible. And from a critical standpoint, I guess, yeah, Infinity War could be argued as being better. But this is my list. These are my 5 favourites. Not necessarily the 5 best, but my 5 favourites and the ones that I enjoy the most. And Avengers Endgame, I have never felt more in love with a movie than I did with Avengers Endgame. I mean, from the second it started, Hawkeye's family gone. And it breaks my heart instantly. I was crying. I was sobbing through the whole 3-hour movie. I feel ever so sorry for anyone who sat next to me on opening day. Because, or any of the other times, because I cry every time I watch it. But it's just so good. It's so good, and it's a movie that wouldn't work was it not for the fact that we've spent, you know, about 11 years at this point with those characters. So you can get away with doing a movie like this and have it work because I already know the backstories. I already know everything about these characters. They're people. They're my friends as such. I know them. So I can watch this movie and enjoy it because I know them so well. It's a bit like Logan. They couldn't do that movie without the umpteen years of screen time Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman had as those characters. It's the same with this. You couldn't get away with it with any other movie or any other franchise. And yeah, it's a really long movie. It's 3 hours long. And that puts off a lot of people instantly. But it never feels like 3 hours long because there is always something happening. There's always something to enjoy. You're never bored in those 3 hours. And it's almost like they're 3 hour long episodes because you've got the first hour looking at the fallout of the snap and how the world is, how the Avengers are, what's happened in those 5 years. And then the second hour is the time travel element with regards to them going back along key moments in the MCU to get the Infinity Stones. And sure, you can argue that that's very fan wanky, and it is, but it works because it's earned. And it doesn't feel like fan wank at any point. It feels like a part of the universe, an important aspect. But I still get that satisfaction from it because it's just so well done. And then the last hour is putting the universe back together and the final battle. I mean, the final battle, guys. The portals, Cap with the hammer. Oh my god, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. I've seen this movie a million times. And I still get that excited about it. That is why it's just, oh, I can't put into words how brilliant it is. And especially considering it's a superhero movie, it's a kids movie, it's a Disney movie, this movie is really dark. Black Widow's death in itself is horrifying, it's horrible. I love Black Widow, she's one of my favourite Avengers, and that scene, I really thought Hawkeye was going to die. Because this is the only movie where Hawkeye's been a standout character. Not that he's bad in any of them, it's just he never really gets a point in the limelight, whereas he was in this movie a lot. And I thought that was going to be part of his redemptive arc. And obviously Black Widow had a movie coming out later on in the year at the time. So I really was surprised when she died. And it really set up this, oh, anyone can go. Anyone can die in this movie, anything can happen. And it does, it broke my heart. And Iron Man's death, I mean, I can't put into words. That broke me. that broke me. It's so heartbreaking because for most people, the 5 years after the snap, that was the worst 5 years of their life. But for Tony, it was the best 5 years of his life because he finally found peace. He didn't need to be Iron Man. He didn't need to be a superhero. He got his family. He got his life. He could finally just enjoy life. And when he discovers time travel and that he can reverse what's happened, you see it in his eyes when he says to Pepper, you know, I've done it. He knows that he can do it, but he's not really sure if he wants to because he doesn't want to lose what he's got. He doesn't want to lose those 5 years and he doesn't want to lose the life that he's built because he's finally happy. And that added on to everything. He was the guy who started the MCU. He is their figurehead. He's arguably the main character in the MCU, you know? He's the one that you follow, really. And his death, it's so heroic and it's heartbreaking. And yeah, it's so well done. And it gives him a good send-off. Not many characters that you know for that long and that you adore that much get a good send-off. But even though I love Iron Man, I love Robert Downey Jr., I don't want him to come back to the MCU because that was the perfect send-off. It broke my heart, and that's how I want it to be, in a weird way, you know? And there's a lot in this movie where it ties up a lot of loose ends. And if this was the last movie in the MCU, that would be okay, because it ties up all the loose plot points, really. You know, the characters that are still alive. You sort of get a sense that some of them are still going about. The Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor, they're still going to do their thing. Captain America, he goes back and then he finally gets his happy ending. He gets to be reunited with Peggy Carter. So it's a really nice bookend to the whole of the MCU. But even though it's not the last movie, it's just a really nice bookend to the Infinity Saga. And it makes me happy that they pulled it off. They shouldn't have been able to pull this off this well. This was 11 years in the build-up. And after the ending of Infinity War, I went in opening day thinking, this movie's going to disappoint me. Not because Marvel aren't good, they're amazing. But I knew the build-up and the expectation and what I wanted the movie to do. And it smashed it. It smashed it. It's an incredible movie. And it lived up to the hype. You know, the characters have a good ending, all of them. Even the ones that have a movie coming up. Like Thor. You know, he's got a good ending there. Passes on Asgard, he's going to do his own thing. Fantastic. If I never saw another Thor movie again, doesn't matter, because that's his ending. It's just, I've spoken about this movie for far too long, and I'm gushing over it. But it does something to me that no other movie does. So that's my top 5. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you all for your support. I've had a blast doing this, I'm not going to lie. So I'm going to continue making videos. And if you have any suggestions for me, what you'd like to see, not just for movies, anything really, drop them down in the comments section below. Like, subscribe, all that jazz, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you all for your support.